All right, welcome back. This morning again, we are set to have a discussion with another woman in leadership. This time, CEO in the Ministry of Education. Good morning, Miss Mahia.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right,
Thanks for having me.
it's a pleasure. We're keeping with the trend this morning. Women in leadership. We're coming to the end of Women's Month, so it's only right. But of course, we're here to talk about an important topic: education. We see where several interventions are taking place within Belize City to try and curb some of the fundamental issues that our young people are facing, and one of those solutions, perhaps, or contribution to that discussion is education. And so here you are, you and your ministry have been making an effort to kind of bridge that gap where education is concerned, particularly in Southside Belize City. And I raise that because in the House of Representatives last week, we saw an announcement, we heard an announcement first from the Deputy Prime Minister, Colonel Hyde, who announced that free education program is being rolled out. We've heard about the education program, free education program, but he made mention of some specific high schools. So what can you tell us about what's happening there with the free education program?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So the Education Upliftment Project,
Yes.
the theme, the overarching, the umbrella idea for this project is Together We Rise. This is the brainchild of Minister Fonseca, and it's been fully embraced by our government. We're so grateful for that. And we do get the Education Upliftment Project rolling come the new academic year. But the work has actually been ongoing for the past few months. The 4 schools that are targeted are Gwenlis Oraga High School, Excelsior, Maud Williams, and Sadie Vernon. So we know that these are 4 really important schools to help to capture and to engage the population of young people in the south side of Belize City.
Yeah.
We have done needs assessment surveys. Extensive work has been done within the Ministry of Education to try to document what the needs are. Because I'm sure if you have a conversation with anybody, everybody will say, oh, this is what's happening, oh, this is what they need. Well, we actually have done needs assessment surveys to recognize what needs are. And based on what we've found from those surveys, based on the communications that our officers have had, we've really been able to start to flesh out this project. And as you said just now, one component is definitely the free education. We've spoken here in this very room. We have spoken about losing students over the course of the pandemic. What we see is that the combined enrollment in those 4 schools right now is 798 over 4 high schools. And these are schools that have the capacity to hold so many more.
Wow.
So
That's post-COVID. Well,
this is current.
This is, okay.
This is current, right?
Wow.
Pre-COVID, I mean, easily one of these schools
Would
could
have
have held,
700.
over 400 students. So to have 4 schools with a combined enrollment of less than 800 is really telling, right? It lets us know how many students have basically been lost along the way. We've spoken about how during the pandemic, we couldn't be sure how many people we had lost, because it wouldn't be until we began to bring them back into school that we could tell. Well, the past few months of tracking attendance have said to us that it's significant.
So let me just backtrack for a bit.
Sure.
I do want to say, I remember when you and Minister Fonseca were here and you announced that you would be exploring this pilot project. It sounds like you've been putting in quite a bit of groundwork with that research. What are the reasons that we found so far that specifically students at high school age are not returning? And is there also a gender, what's the gender breakdown?
So that's a great question. One of the primary reasons we have found has to do with the economics of the situation, right? Not being at a time when things are hard, it's hard to find money for school fees. Hence the rollout of free education, specifically with these schools. What that means is that come the new academic year, these students will have their tuition and fees completely paid for by the government, okay? Because that's one of the primary reasons for their not returning. We also have seen really concerns regarding food.
Yeah.
Food. You know, there's
Mommy or
there's no
daddy
food.
don't have money to
There's
give you
no
to buy
money to give
food,
me
yeah.
for food.
Yeah.
And so that's why the National Healthy Start Feeding Program is such a priority for this government. We know that we've had feeding programs that have focused on primary schools.
That's what I was going to ask.
Right? And that has been the case. What we're trying to make sure of as we move on is that these the feeding programs that we will be setting up will be run more efficiently. We need to make sure that we really get value for our money. So while we have the feeding program starting, there's going to be a pilot for a new way to run the National Healthy Start Feeding Program for primary schools. That will start with 6 primary schools, and it will cover, it will reach 1,000 students in the first instance. So while that is happening, we also need to make sure that with our 4 schools in the Education Upliftment Project, that we have a feeding program in place for them, so that at minimum we know that when they come to school they can get a meal.
Yes.
You know, so that's one of the things that we're
So
looking at.
one less barrier. So
One
you
less
may have
barrier.
free tuition, but what about uniforms and books and all these other supplementary things that
so
accumulate?
that's another layer.
Yeah.
You may remember that one of the successful areas of grant funding that we've found is through CABE. CABE has put in place a scholarship fund, and it's going to reach certain students, some of whom will be part of the Education Upliftment Project. And the funds here will go toward uniforms, shoes, the other things that you would need to pay for, right? You know, it's impossible to meet every single need for every single person. But what we're really trying to do is to make sure that we're checking off. It's like you have this really, really long to-do list, and we're trying to check off the barriers.
Yeah, this is almost a crisis situation that you are looking at, with 800 students amongst 4 government high schools. I want to go back to look at some of the policy issues that may be changed. Mandatory education is up until the age of 14, which means after that, nobody really has to send their children to school.
Right.
And that means at the secondary level especially, that's where all the dropouts can happen. Is there a look at policy changes or legislative changes to ensure that at least secondary education is mandatory, which means raising the age?
There has been a study done. It concluded a few months ago, and the overwhelming result of the study was supporting the increasing of the compulsory school age to 16.
Okay.
And so that is one. Now, of course, with doing that, there are all the ripple effects, right? You know, that we have to look at. Who pays for it?
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's one of the things that we're looking toward, because we recognize how critically important it is for us to try to reach our young people.
What about instruction? You know, I think this is one of the things that we don't talk about. I remember reading a study or an article about a study saying that the best thing to do is to put your strongest educators in your most vulnerable schools. We do the opposite. Or we don't, I don't think we consciously make that effort. There are 2 things I imagine. One, the learning loss that perhaps has taken place, and the undiagnosed or unrecognized learning challenges that people may have that allow them to drop out of school. When you feel like you're only going to fail, you don't want to go back to school. How do we overcome that with this population that we know if they're educated, they're not on the streets getting involved in
Right.
crime?
Right. So we really, this is going to be the optimist in me coming out. We really have to make a definitive effort to begin at the beginning, to just focus on the basics again. I'm really thankful that initiatives that we started, like our Teacher Learning Institute, have been so successful, because with an initiative like that, we are able to reach out. We are now over 5,000 teachers across the country who are subscribers on the TLI, and they're active users of the TLI. What this means is that we can use the TLI to help to equip the teachers, the instructors at this school, with the tools that they will need to begin to address these needs. You know, and I think the fact that going into this year, and I mean this current year as well as the academic year to come, going into it, we recognize this as a challenge.
Yeah.
We live in a society where for many years, too many of our administrators have denied special needs and learning disabilities at all levels. Too many of our administrators have said, oh, I don't have any students with special needs in my school. What? Like, no. You know, we have students with varied learning disabilities in every classroom in this country, regardless of level. And we are more and more coming to a place where our teachers are cognizant of that fact, and our administrators are now cognizant of that fact. And you know, if you know that there is a problem, you can begin to address it. And so now the fact that across the board we have a more universal acceptance of this means that we can begin to address. We have to start with the teachers. We have to start with the principals. We begin to, and we have, just to be fair, I'm saying, you know, I'm using future tense, but in reality, we have started this work. This work started some time ago.
But it sounds like an intensive care program for these 4 schools. And so the question is, are you taking the teachers and administrators from these schools who you're hoping to re-engage these young minds and get them interested and willing to go back to school? Is there a concentrated effort there? Because even the type of instruction that we do, we know it's not one size fits all. You've been in a classroom, you know that.
I know this. Actually, yes. Starting next month, we begin a series of workshops, training sessions. We're beginning with the administrators of the schools, the principal, vice principal, board members. We start with them, and you know, the goal is to really make this be something that we're beginning with you, and then it spreads out so that we can engage the community of the school. And there are lots of layers here, right? Because I mean, we're looking at fees, we're looking at the economics of it, we're looking at the learning. We also have to look at, you know, the curriculum needs. We have to look at, and then the external things like transportation
and mental health,
the mental health needs of these communities, you know. And so we have a lot of different ideas for ways to expand the reach, make this be more than just I'm putting a band-aid on this cut. You know, trying to see how we can solve and resolve a lot of the issues that are happening.
So far financially, the commitment that you have, because you're right, and it's almost like, you know, you can't just focus on one area, because you could give tuition, but then they may not have uniform. You could give uniform, but they may not have food. You can give food, but then they can't walk across.
But there's no internet.
Yeah, you can't walk across because you don't walk across enemy turf, you know?
Right.
And I may also have major issues at home that make me incapable of being tuned in a classroom. So Is it just a Ministry of Education program? Or are you working with other ministries?
We are.
Health, human development?
We have commitment across the board. I mean, just now you said health and human development, and both of those ministries have committed their support and are willing, and other ministries have as well. I mean, like infrastructure, for example. The Ministry of Infrastructure and Development is helping us with, you know, figuring out what needs to be done with these buildings.
Yeah.
You know, what's structurally sound, you know, where do we do renovations, what needs improvement. And in those ways, really, we save money because we recognize where we have in-house capacity from ministry to ministry. And so I'm really grateful because we have the commitment of other ministries to work with us in the many different areas.
Let's perhaps look at the National Healthy Start feeding program. What that entails in terms of its objectives and its goals.
Okay, so one of the sustainable development goals, of course, is to ensure that children are able to have healthy and nutritious meals. And so that has been the commitment of really every school feeding program there. What we've recognized is that we really need to do more. We need to expand the feeding programs that existed before. And as I said, we need to make sure that as a government that we get value for money. So the feeding program now, as it's being worked out, as it's being piloted, we have support from external organizations. AMEXID and FAO, for example, are very involved, very engaged, and they're helping us to build a program that is sort of a wraparound program. So it links the community. It links, so it teaches about, for example, school gardens. So you learn to plant. It links in the rural communities. It's linked to the farmers who are in the community. The families learn to support the program as well. So it's not, no school will be operating in isolation for its feeding program. And in that way, the goal is to make it a sustainable program. This is not, I'm paying you $5 for a meal and you're bringing in a plate of food for the kids. It's not that concept.
Because I know that the school garden concept has been one that's been ongoing for a while. Have we explored why it has not taken off and how you strengthen it now with this new model?
So it's difficult for me to speak of pre-pandemic. But during the pandemic, obviously, it was very hard for schools to maintain their gardens because they weren't there. And I think one of the things that we've learned from COVID is not just the need to eat healthier and, you know, to be more conscious of what we put on our table, but also the benefits of gardening. The benefits, mental health as well as physical health, right? So I think that as we begin to move back to school, we are going to see more interest in from the teachers, even from students, because we have seen students who have been gardening at home with their parents, right? So I think that regardless of whatever challenges existed with maintaining school gardens before, I think we are going to see more interest in keeping the gardens active, keeping the gardens healthy. I think we recognize that gardening is good for schools on more than one level now. This is not just, you know, there's a lot of things are shifting about school now. A lot of things that were thought of as add-ons, as unnecessary, as the things that you do. If you have time, then you can do this. If you have time, you do PE. If you have time, you do art. You know, first you have to hit the books. I think what we're seeing is a shift to recognize that these things really are such a crucial part of your learning experience. And so I am so happy for that. I've been a proponent of that sort of thing for so long.
The interactive learning is, and for children, you know, that's far more fun and engaging.
Learning has to be relevant. You know, you can be building a garden and you know, counting blocks and measuring and, you know, you read and you
What's
write
the
and you
difference
do
between
math.
the liter and the cup of water, all these
Exactly,
things?
you know,
Yeah.
there's so many ways to make everything connect.
What
I
hear-
wanna just, if I could shift gears so quickly, because I know that the biggest thing on people's mind right now is the going back to school, the full return to school, and there is a hybrid structure in place right now. I think almost all schools are open now and not online with hybrid, and you're rolling out a diagnostic test. You've said that you won't publicize the results in general, but what are you measuring from the children?
So what we're trying to figure out really is, where are you? Where are you specifically with language literacy and with math literacy, with numeracy, right? One of the challenging things about a diagnostic test from the point of the teacher, the person who's administering the test, is you really need to be flexible with it. Because especially for us in this situation where as a nation we've never attempted to do this before, and we've had to recognize that if you, for example, Paul, are in standard 4, I can't automatically give you the standard 4 test because you may not be able to do the standard 4 test because you've effectively maybe not have been engaged for 2 years. So there's a certain amount of flexibility. And it's terrifying.
No, I'm thinking standard 4. The last time they were in a classroom was standard 2.
Exactly.
That's mind-blowing.
So we've had to really be flexible with this, and we've had to, say, all right, well, maybe we won't start with this. Maybe we'll start with this, because you're right. The psychological effects of something. If you start off something and you're successful in the beginning, you're more inclined to continue. If you start something and you are at page 1 and you are like totally unable to do this, you're going to be bawling and giving up, right? So what we're attempting to find out is, where are you as the student?
Not based on class level, but based on age markers. I'm trying to understand. So it's like, if I'm 11, I should know I should be center 4, center 5, something like that.
So it's
upper
more,
school.
So it's more like, okay, at the end of standard 4, I expect that you will have covered these things in English, in language. At the end of standard 4, I expect that you should be able to do these things in math. Can you do them? Right? And then if you can't, then what the teachers need to do is figure out how to get you to that point where you should be.
So it's almost like measuring the collective learning loss that we know has taken place over the
happened,
pandemic.
But how do we quantify it? That's a difficult thing, right? So
Are all schools doing it?
Yes.
It's mandatory?
It's mandatory, and the test has been, the suite of tests covers from infant 1 to standard 6. So it's significant. Now, there have been a few challenges. There are bumps in the road as we start. First of all, we can only do the diagnostic test for the child who is in school, right? So in the beginning, there were little issues. January, we didn't have full attendance. We tried to get everybody in during the month of January. We didn't get everybody in during the month of February, as our COVID numbers went down and attendance went up. They were directly, related. So we've seen attendance improve greatly over the past few weeks. As the attendance has grown, so has the ability or the capacity to begin to administer the diagnostic test. But it really isn't something that you can do or that you should do all at once in one day. You kind of need to break it up, especially because the kids are, for the in most cases, coming back like 2 days at a time, or they have shortened days. It's like building back your capacity. If you haven't been exercising for a long time, the first day you exercise, you can't do all that you used to do before. Right? So you have to build back, right? So it's taking a while. The teachers also have been incredible, just learning how to do this, learning about the administration of the test, as well as how to mark the test,
Yeah.
and how to plug in the results so that they can tell really what your scores show.
Yeah.
And then of course the next step is, how do I now tailor my plans
Yeah.
to try to reach? If I expect that in my classroom, for example, all of my children, all my students are supposed to know how to multiply fractions. And I recognize from this test that they don't know how to multiply fractions. As a matter of fact, they hardly remember what fractions are. I know that I have to adjust my lesson. It doesn't matter what my curriculum, my pre-pandemic curriculum says. I have to make sure that I go back now and I start, with refreshing for what fractions are.
This, I'd venture to say maybe next year, 2 years, it's all kind of like figuring out how to adjust
Yeah.
the school system going back. And I know the anticipation is that by next semester, all children will go back face to face. But we understand the financial situation in the country, and schools are starting to feel it as well. Parents can't or won't pay fees. Schools have to provide some basic necessities, from your electricity to the water and the soap and hand sanitizer, and it's becoming unsustainable in some schools. How do you, as a ministry, look at where these financial implications are showing up? You can't force parents to pay. Schools aren't forcing parents to pay. How do you move forward understanding the realities on the ground?
I think that we have really been trying to deal with whatever requests are coming to us,
Yeah.
like literally on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
As far as the need for cleaning supplies, soap and sanitizer, that sort of thing has been, we've been addressing. We have been giving. We had that huge donation from the Church of Latter-day Saints a couple months ago, when we issued close to 2,000 packages of soap, sanitizer, masks, cleaning supplies,
Yeah.
bleach, disinfectant. And we are now, we've had in stock. So if a school says,
need.
help, I'm
Yeah.
out, we're able to respond. We've also seen that the community has responded to
Yeah.
schools' needs. So I think that the need for that urgency that at one point schools were feeling, I would venture to say that it has lessened. We are now beginning a purchase from ministry funds, and we've done all the work. We're getting the supplies in now to set up another almost 2,000 packages, so that again, when a school says, help, I'm out, we are able to respond.
Yeah.
Another need that we have seen, that we've heard from the schools, is the need for paper.
Yeah, or printing costs.
Right? So we have to try to address what we can, and what we found was that we could help with paper. So beginning, I think it should be the end of this week, I think the paper got delivered to us, but we will be giving each school paper to help, because that's been significant. So we actually did how I am with my lists. we looked at the list, and we did it based on population, right?
Yeah.
If your population was this much, you get one case. If it's this much, you get 2 cases, that sort of thing. So we have paper to help them with. We've had requests from schools to assist with water bill, for example.
Yeah.
We've had requests
let's
to help
look at
with
what's happening.
Cleaners,
2
with
things.
wardens.
Either parents can't pay, and that's a reality, or they're saying, why should I pay if
haven't
my
been
child is
there,
only
or-
there part-time, but schools require funds to run. So it is a tough situation. So it does seem that you're diving into some of the more practical needs for
Absolutely.
schools that get overlooked.
And because that's what we have to do, right? It's like if you run your household, you figure, okay, what do I need?
Yeah.
This is what I have. This is what I need.
Yeah.
How do I begin to match those things up? And that's really been our approach, you know. If the schools, and we can't solve all the problems immediately. Some of the requests that we get, we can't address right away, but we kind of have to table them until we can.
Yeah.
But we've really been trying to do that, you know. And I have to again commend the schools and the communities that work with them, because we have seen, especially in some of the rural areas, you know, we've seen where the community has really just band together and supported the school. So, you know, I've said to, you know, I said to a principal a couple of weeks ago, I was like, how do you do this? You know, the school is this beautiful little place, San Pedro Government School in rural Corozal, and it's a lovely school, and it's been supported by the community. The U.S. Southern Command assisted with building a new building for them, and you know, it's this lovely little place, and everybody's there. They're working, they're engaged, and I think, you know, that really our principals and our teachers can work magic sometimes.
There are many unsung heroes in the education.
Absolutely.
And I want to take the opportunity. I know you were recently in Graham Creek.
Yes.
At the school there. We at Channel 5 have a long history. I remember our reporter Andrea Polanco did the trek in when there was no road.
Yeah.
To show what teachers had to endure. Tell us a bit of what Graham Creek is like today.
Well, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. We took the boat route in. We were told that because of the rains, that it would not have been advisable for us to make the trek. So we did a 2-hour boat ride, and then it was about a 30-minute hike in.
So it still has some accessibility issues.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. No, that hasn't changed. It has not changed. And it was an absolutely phenomenal experience. It was so powerful. And Graham Creek, the government school, is staffed by 2 wonderful teachers. The principal is a teaching principal, and so he teaches from Standard 2 to Standard 6. The other teacher teaches from Infant 1 to Standard 1. It's a 2-classroom school. And they have, they have phone service and internet from Guatemala. Because you can't get service from Belize, but you can get from Guatemala. They have their books and material. They have their challenges, but they go to school. They rotate their schedules. It's like the same things that everyone else is going through, they're going through. They wear their masks, and they have their schedules, and they're learning amidst all the challenges. You know, the language of instruction in the school is English. They speak Spanish and Quechua, and it just was an absolutely fantastic experience. We were so glad that we had just received that donation of laptops. And so we were able to take 5 of them, and, you know, immediately the principal says, oh no, great, I can use this to help me with BDAP.
And this was the one through the diaspora, the laptop donation that's being done with the diaspora unit. Running out of time, and I have 2 other issues very quickly. And you could just give me an update. One, I saw, you know, Stella Maris. What is happening with Stella Maris, and also IT vets? Because these are 2 areas near and dear to my heart. I think, you know, children can benefit from vocational learning, and it helps to build entrepreneurs, or special needs children have long needed a proper school.
So we are looking at some real revolutionizing what's happening at Stella Maris. One of the things that we have recognized is that Stella Maris is much more than a primary school. It cannot, and it should no longer continue to be treated as a regular primary school. This is really a center for lifelong learning. And so the chief and I have been part of some work that's been happening there, and they are doing a lot of work. We have a principal who is extremely committed to just changing ideas there, and so I think that's great. She's doing a great job. And part of the difference is the approach. We're looking with Stella Maris, like I said, at seeing it as somewhere that students can be for longer than their primary years. Because the need, you don't stop being a special needs student when you're finished with primary school. You know, this is for life. So we're really
and a lot of times they graduate and nobody wants to employ them.
Nobody wants to employ them. So we're focusing really on building life skills and employability for these students. And I hope that in April you're going to be open to talking with some of them, because we have a team that's working on some really exciting initiatives that will engage students who are at Stella Maris and other special needs students across the country. So that's exciting, and I'm really happy about that. I'm very proud of the team that's working now with special education and guiding the work there. The special envoy, Mrs. Briceño, is very engaged, and Christy from Autism Belize, they have been really committed to expanding the vistas and building capacity. Today they start, all the special education officers across the country are beginning today an intensive week-long training to build their capacity in so many different things, including the writing of IEPs, which is a fantastic, it's never been done before, it's absolutely needed. So there's great things happening there internally. And then we also have physical work on the building and the structure that is going to be beginning. So that's
okay. So we'll look forward to more updates with that one. That'll be a separate conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
And enrollment at IT Vet, I know Belize City was struggling for a bit.
Yeah, they're all struggling. Yeah, we have a lot to do where the IT Vets are concerned. We're grateful. We have new boards of management at the IT Vets, people who are really excited, I think, about trying to do things differently. And one thing I'm particularly excited about is that we've been having conversations about priority needs for the country across the ministries, right? My colleague CEOs have been very patient with me. I ask them questions like, so what do you guys see that you need? What do we need in this country? Because we do not have a current or an updated list of priority areas of study. We didn't find any. And we have to recognize that we are at a time when we need our young people to stop thinking, oh, I want to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like, we don't need anybody else to study business administration. Sorry, business people. But, you know, we need to begin to look at other things, right? And so, as I said, my colleague CEOs have been wonderful and patient with me, and they've given me all these lists. They know I'm a list person, I think, right? But of fantastic ideas, and we've seen that there's so many opportunities that exist. I'll give you one example. CEO Urbina says to me, maritime and logistics professionals. And I said, what's that? And he said, wait. And I had a fantastic meeting at the Port Authority with two brilliant gentlemen, and found out all about how many career opportunities there are in this field. You know, from marine engineers to, you know, all the training that you can do to be a boat captain, and you know, and all the career opportunities that open up along there. And some of these are things that we can do as short-term courses. These are not all necessarily, you know, things that you have to go and study 4 years or 7 years to get a degree for. Bit by bit, we want to begin to engage our IT vets with some of these newer, if you will. And I'm only saying new because I think they're new for us to realize and publicize, not because these needs weren't there before, right? But we want to begin to link with the IT vets across the country to begin to offer more courses that are things that we recognize as needs. The Belize City IT vet is now running the Skills for the Green Economy course.
Nice.
And that is absolutely something else that we need. You know, there are lots of areas where we have to begin to expose our young people, things that our country absolutely needs. I have a pending meeting for air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
You know, Ministry of the Blue Economy and Civil Aviation. This is not just about being a pilot. You know, you can also be an air traffic controller. We need these jobs in our country. So we're trying to put together, it's a priority for us, a list that is going to be directly related to not just what you want to be, but how can you get there?
Yeah.
And then it's
jobs that exist.
Connected to jobs that exist.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
So,
Anything else you'd like to share with us? We're so out of time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No, we have, there's much work to be done.
Well, we appreciate you coming in. I think everyone wanted more information about the pilot program for secondary education in the Southside. It's called Uplifting.
The Education Upliftment Project, Together We Rise.
Together We Rise. And of course, the updates and all the other aspects. And I'm sure there's much more.
Lots more.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in.
I forgot something very important. Please, I need to congratulate the team at Niche and the Institute of Creative Arts for the absolutely fantastic work that has been happening. The Women in Art exhibit.
Yes.
You know, we're talking about women in leadership. I think that the theme that they had, the reemergence, a kaleidoscope of creativity, is just fantastic. It's so exciting that we are seeing the reemergence of art and culture. And so, you know, and it's women-led.
Yeah,
Right?
the curator was a woman, Brigida, of course, there. And I think that exhibit is still open until the 31st.
Yes, it is. So
All
if
right.
you haven't seen it yet, please check it out. It's a great exhibit, and there's much work. There's a show, a dance show happening this weekend at the Bliss. We're back.
Finally,
We're
right?
back, yes.
Okay.
and it's women-led, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, CEO. With that, we're going to take our final break, and we'll be back to wrap up this morning's show. Stay tuned.